Hello and welcome to the Body and Soul Cafe. I'm your host Smiley, a somatic therapist, a nervous system nerd, a wellness workshop facilitator, and someone who's deeply curious about what it means to feel home in ourselves. And today, I want to explore something that has quietly but profoundly changed the way I experience my body, my relationships, and the world around me. And before we dive deep into it, let me ask you something. I want you to think of a moment, maybe it was a dinner table or a classroom or a job workplace, where you just knew you didn't fit. No one said anything, no one had to, you just felt it. Maybe it was in your chest or in your stomach, maybe it was a tightening, maybe it was just this unsettling feeling. Like something in you went quiet and small. Now I want you to think of something opposite. A moment where you walked into a room and something exhaled inside you. Where you looked around and thought, yes, these are my people. Here's what I want to talk about today. That feeling isn't just metaphorical, it's not a mood, it's not a vibe. It is a biological event. Belonging, or the absence of belonging that sometimes we feel, is written into our nervous system, into our hormones, in our immune system. And just stay with me here. It's also in our relationship to people in our family systems who came before us, our ancestors, and the societal system where we are, the communities. And belonging to me is not just a feeling, it's sort of like a frequency, and your body is tuned to it constantly, whether you're paying attention to it or not. And we're going to start with our brain to begin with. I want to bring it to your awareness that there is a part of our brain that processes physical pain, and this part where we experience physical pain is the same part that processes being left out, like rejection, exclusion. Think of a moment when someone turns away from you at a party, the moment your family goes silent when you walk in. And this was tested like in a video game setting where participants were all wired, and it was a game of tossing a ball, and mid-game the other players just stopped tossing the ball to this one player, and that's it. And that's all it took. When the brain scan showed that the participant who didn't receive the tossing of the ball, their pain centers lit up. The pain centers that light up when someone is physically hurt. Those ones. Which comes to show that your brain doesn't distinguish between a broken arm and a broken belonging. It treats exclusion as a threat to our survival, because for most of human history, it was a threat. Being cast out of a tribe, even in the hunter-gatherer days, didn't mean hurt feelings alone, it meant death. But there's a flip side to this. When you do feel belonging, like real, genuine, seen and known belonging, your brain releases a chemical that does the extraordinary things. It lowers the stress hormones, it quiets your freer center, it tells your entire body you are safe now. You can put down your armor. That armor that most of us are carrying. And running alongside all of this is a nerve, the longest one in your body, that travels from your brain all the way down to your gut. It is like the biological cable of connection. And when it's healthy and working well, you can regulate your emotions. I'm talking about the vagus nerve, of course. You feel empathy more easily. Your heart literally beats more easily. But when someone has spent years or a childhood without belonging, that very nerve becomes dysregulated. The body stays on guard. It never quite settles. And that's not a character flaw or a personality trait. That is a nervous system that learned the world isn't safe enough to relax. Now I want you to think about what a baby actually needs. Food, warmth, safety. But there's also something else, something just as essential. They need to be received. They need a caregiver who looks at them and essentially says with presence, I see you. You're welcome here. You don't have to earn this. Like our existence mattered. And when a child has that consistently, reliably, something very remarkable develops. The child learns that they can fully be themselves and still be loved. That they don't have to perform, they don't have to shrink, they don't have to guess the mood in the room, they don't have to earn love. But when that isn't there, when the love is unpredictable, it's conditional, it's frightening, it's inconsistent, it's simply absent, the child makes a very interesting adaptation, a brilliant, heartbreaking adaptation. They create a version of themselves designed to survive the environment. A self that's more agreeable, or sometimes it's about making ourselves smaller, invisible, or more useful, maybe funny, or endlessly hardworking and capable. It is essentially what the family needed. And here is what I need you to hear. That adaptation is not just psychological, it's not just in the mind, it lives in our body. It is the person who laughs too quickly. It is the person who feels shrunk when they're rejected, who monitors the room compulsively, who overfunctions before being abandoned, who apologizes before they even done something. These are bodies that learned very early that being fully yourself was not safe to belong. And that is a wound that lives in the body, not just in the memory. And here's something that might feel uncomfortably familiar. Every family has unspoken rules about who gets to belong and on what terms. Some families have what I'd like to call conditional love with loyalty clauses. You belong here as long as you stay in your role. As long as you don't outshine, as long as you don't ask too many questions, as long as you carry the weight you need to carry. And so family produces roles. The child who becomes the emotional caretaker of the parents, the one who acts out all the anger no one else is allowed to express, the one who succeeds so brilliantly, they become the family's proof that everything is fine, actually. The one who completely disappears and takes very little space. These roles are not chosen. These roles are assigned to us by the system. These roles become the only way to survive in the system. And they produce bodies. Because the nervous system learns what I must be in order to stay inside this circle of this family, to survive in this system, to belong in this system. And the tragedy is this: when you stay in that role long enough, you forget it's a role. You think it's just who you are. You think this is what you look like. This is what life looks like. This is what you feel like. You've been performing for so long, you've lost the thread back to yourself. There are really only two ways people respond to this. One, they lose themselves completely to maintain the closeness. They decide that, in order to fit in, it's okay to lose myself. The second type is they cut completely off. They burn the bridge. It is also a protection. It's like, before anyone else can leave, let me actually pull myself out. They convince themselves that they don't really need people. Neither of those is belonging. And now I want to talk about the bigger picture, because not all belonging happen only in the family table. Some happen in the broader world, by institutions, by systems, by the subtle, not so subtle architecture of who's represented and who's not, who belongs and who doesn't, who needs to work harder to justify their presence, that they are exception, not the norm. Research has shown something devastating about this. When people know they might be seen as a representative of a group that's been stereotyped, even when nothing is said explicitly, even when no one is being outright hostile, their bodies go into a kind of threat response, which kind of means that, your logical, cognitive mind, the bandwidth narrows. Your body thinks there's a threat. And their performance suffers not because of the ability, because of the physiological cost of navigating the environment that gives them the message they don't fit. Now think about what this would mean over a lifetime. This would be a person who's constantly calibrating. This would mean monitoring of how this person is perceived, whether they are taking up too much space, whether they are confirming someone else's fear about people like them. This is not just a psychological inconvenience. Again, I want to emphasize this is a body under sustained siege. And research into chronic stress has shown that it does real measurable things. It keeps your stress hormones elevated, it inflames your immune system, it affects your memory, it even accelerates the aging of your cells. The body of a chronic exclusion is not a metaphor, it is a clinical reality. Now I want to take you somewhere unexpected, somewhere that some people find hard to accept, and I'm going to ask you to hold it with curiosity. There is a growing body of research showing trauma, real physiological trauma, can be inherited. Not as just a story, not as a memory, but as a biological pattern. Studies on descendants of people who survived genocide, famine, war have found that their children and grandchildren carry altered stress responses in their bodies. Different hormonal baselines, different threat sensitivities. They inherited the body's answer to a danger that they never personally experienced. And this connects to something that therapists who work with family history and intergenerational trauma have observed for decades in their practices. We carry in our bodies loyalties to people in our family line who are excluded, shamed, forgotten, or cast out. This might sound abstract, I hear you, so let me make it a little bit more concrete. If there was someone in your family history who was never spoken about, say a child who died and was never grieved, a relative who was cut off for marrying the wrong person, we hear this a lot of times, a person who carried shame the family needed to bury. There can be an unconscious pull in the descendants to carry something for them, to repeat a pattern, to feel an inexplicable sadness or loneliness or a sense of not belonging that doesn't quite match your own life. It's as if the body is saying someone before me was excluded, and until they are seen, I don't fully allow myself to belong either. And therapists who do intergenerational trauma work probably are familiar that this repeats across cultures, countries, and in several different sessions. I've experienced this personally for myself and with a lot of my clients as well. And when the excluded person is finally acknowledged, when there's a symbolic inclusion, that they existed, they mattered, they belonged. And in that moment of inclusion of the excluded family member from the system, something begins to shift. So, where does that bring us? We've kind of looked at belonging through a few different lenses. And now I want to bring us back to the body. And what is it to experience belonging in our body? Belonging feels like an exhale, like the shoulders dropping, the jaw unclenching, the breath that goes all the way down to the belly. It's like your fear center going quiet because no threat has been detected. It is like a whole system that's saying, the conditions for my existence are here. I can belong. I'm safe. But here's the thing that most people don't realize, and this is the part that changes everything. Belonging begins inside. Before you can genuinely receive belonging from another person, maybe from a group, from a community, you have to have some basic scaffolding of it within yourself. Some basic capacity to be at home in your own body, your own experience, your own history, including the hard parts, including the parts that we are so ashamed to own, to include. Because here's what happens when that isn't there. Belonging, even when it is genuinely an offer, doesn't land. The nervous system is so trained for threat that it rejects connection even when connection is right there. It's like a transplant the body doesn't recognize is safe. And this is why belonging work is such deep body work. It's the slow, patient practice of teaching our nervous system that it is safe to be seen. It's safe to be known. And it's safe to be fully here, just as you are. And this work has several layers to it. There's the psychology layer to it. There's the systemic layer to it, the family systems, the societal systems, the hierarchies that are present. And I think the most important layer is understanding it in our bodies, understanding belonging and safety that lives in our body, and building a relationship with that, slowly nurturing the belonging, being present to how the body feels about belonging, and remembering that I'm not too much, I'm not strange, I'm not alone, I belong. I want to leave you with something that was very powerful for me, this realization that I had, because for the longest time I always thought belonging was something other people had to give me. I didn't know that I had to learn to receive it. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Belonging is not a social achievement, it's not popularity or acceptance or having the right people around us. It is a capacity that's held in our body to be here fully as yourself in the presence of others. And the most beautiful thing about this is that it can be learned. And with that, I want to add that you belong here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, this is Smiley signing off.